I know you wrote an article, things I think I know about the Browns, a couple of them defensive related. Martin Emerson, the real deal. Grant Delpit continues his ascent, and the weight has been lifted. So take us through those three things.
Yeah, so the first thing is Emerson. I'm kind of been a huge fan since day one and wrote about him a lot last year. Just his not only his play but his mental approach and his swagger, his confidence, his in your face style of play that I kind of wish the whole defense would take on. Right. Well, they have this year under Schwartz's command. And Emerson is really thriving. He was running some of those routes for Teagans for him, basically. He stops and reads the back shoulder throw on the one play. I mean, he just made some really incredible, heady plays to keep him catchless in that game, Higgins, and some good plays on Chase as well. He just looks like, and there was some conversation about like, what is his ceiling, right? Like, I think he has a pretty high ceiling. Like, I think he could legit be a number one corner in the league. A lot of people were like, oh, cornerback two. I don't think so. I think he could be a number one. And I think his ceiling is, he could be an all pro someday. I mean, he has that length and the skill set to be really, really good in zone and man. So he is the real deal for me. Grant Delpit finished last season on a high. Absolutely. Came out this year, and look, if we get that version of Grant Delpit all year, this defense is in good shape, right? Like, he looked fantastic on Sunday. 91.3 PFF grade, led the defense. He was all over the place and in coverage. Made the play of the day, probably breaking up that Higgins third down pass in coverage and knocked it right out of his hand. So Delpit continues his ascent. Was kind of the theme of what I was writing is, he finished the end of last year so strong. Coming out this year playing the way he did certainly leads us to maybe the Browns having a tough decision in the future on what they want to do contract-wise with him. And the weight has been lifted is just kind of like, for this team, it was such a long off season, right? Like, and a long, like, even free agency was stretched out. Like, they signed the first free agent at the beginning, they signed their last one, Shelby Harris, like, in the middle of camp, 4 preseason games, Hall of Fame game. It just seemed like, at least in the Cleveland bubble, the pressure has kind of been mounting for them. And to get that win is just such like and to see the defense play that way, it was such like a lift of weight off of their shoulders, and it feels like they can be who they are now, right? And I hope we see that result on Monday night as well.
Yeah, I want to see it back-to-back weeks, as Jim Schwartz had said. So we'll hear more from Schwartz and some of the Browns a little bit later.